Hello, and welcome to another episode of the DevLab podcast. Today, we're joined by Athena Arison, who is a developer and instructional engineer at ManTech. I'm really excited to chat to Athena today and find out a lot about her journey and her take on learning within the world of cybersecurity. And before we do get into that, just a quick introduction to ManTech. ManTech are a current client of HackerJob. And if you're on the lookout for a new role and are inspired by Athena's podcast, then certainly check out the links in the podcast description, and we'd be happy to get you matched up to ManTech. So ManTech is more than a technology company. It's a mission-driven organization dedicated to serving the public trust. From enhancing national security to supporting veterans and advancing healthcare, ManTech's work directly impacts the safety and well-being of communities. There we have it. We've had a great introduction to Athena, a great introduction to ManTech. Let's get into the meat of the conversation. So Athena, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you, Phil.
Awesome. Look, I think a good place to start, I'm sure anyone out there listening in will be intrigued by your journey. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path from, starting out in the army to teaching advanced cyber training, and really what kind of sparked your initial interest in the world of technology?
So it is a crazy story. I actually joined the Army really late. So I joined right before the cutoff time of 35. So before that, I did nursing. And when I went to join the Army, I had the thought to continue on that nursing journey, but they didn't have anything available at the time. So they were like, hey, we got this tech thing. We don't know a whole lot about it. I was in Alabama. So they were like, you got to take a test. And if you pass the test, you can do the thing. And I was like, well, I like to poke around on computers a little bit. I grew up way back in the 80s. So, I didn't grow up on computers like kids nowadays do. But it was a learning experience. Going through that test kind of gave me the perspective of what they may be expecting from me when I got through that. Went to some programs in Pensacola for a little bit, and then came to San Antonio. When I got to San Antonio, was waiting on clearance, how that goes. So got bored, and I was like, hey, is there anything I can do in the meantime? And they were like, hey, we have a computer programming class with the Air Force. And I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting and cool and challenging. I'd like to give it a shot. So I went and did that class. I ended up working with the Air Force / Army for the entire 6 years that I was in. Went to ACTP myself, actually on the Windows side, and took that course. And so I knew Fran and Mike, whom I also worked with in the Army that also works for ACTP, was there at the time. And I was like, hey, can I come to ManTech? And it started out as I was going to be on contract. And I worked with Fran for a little bit to kind of assist and help out with the class. Ended up on the Linux side, actually really loved it, and decided to stay. So I've been teaching since I got to ManTech 2021.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Excellent. And look, really, really nice to hear such a diverse career journey. And I think you probably bring a wealth of life experience and different perspectives to lots of different people in the room, right? Who've maybe gone through that more traditional route of, a technology degree, a STEM degree, and then straight into the world of cybersec. So I'm sure
most
that really
people that come in are computer science or engineering. And so that kind of and they grew up in computers, so they've had a phone in their hand or a tablet, or they're programming in elementary school, and so that's a fun journey too, to see what they come out with.
Yeah, for sure. And look, bringing all those different perspectives together, I'm sure is what, part of what makes ManTech such a great place to work. I just want to kind of focus in on the teaching element there. So I guess, it's not really anything you set out to do initially. It's not maybe where you envisaged yourself ending up, but, as you touched on, now you love it. You've stuck with ManTech ever since you kind of fell into that particular role. What was the biggest mindset shift or lesson, I suppose, that really made you embrace the world of teaching?
So it was me getting over speaking in front of people. Was the biggest hurdle for me. In pre-Army, there were speeches I had to do in college that I was not a fan of, face turn red, forget all my things that I'm saying. So it was always a nerve thing about getting in front of people. I was never very comfortable with it. And then the Army, I had to do a couple of briefs. So it kind of pushed me there a little, but I still was I'm not sure. And the first time that I had to lead a class, I called Fran and I was like, I can't do this. I'm gonna nope. So the biggest mind shift was me knowing that I have the knowledge and the skills, and that getting up in front of people is really not that big of a deal. They're just people. They're just the same as me. They have the same experience as me. A lot of them are introverted as well. So bringing them out of their comfort zone kind of helps me to get out of my comfort zone. So it was a shift in thought and also in the ability to speak in front of people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, that'll help you to empathize when you are teaching, right? Because, a lot of the time when we're coaching people or teaching people or working to upskill people, like one of the big barriers they're facing is that imposter syndrome and feeling like maybe, they're not good enough to do that, right? And you having that lived experience, you can really kind of pass that on to them, I guess. Awesome. Um, you've obviously mentioned a little bit earlier that, moving into teaching was also a learning experience for you. Like, what was the big thing you learned from your students? Was it that kind of that point we just touched on there, or are there other things that you feel like they've taught you?
I mean, it's that and students' natural curiosity and their want to dig in kind of makes me have to go do some research on a couple of things if I don't know. We talk about imposter syndrome, and not everybody can be an expert in everything. When I went into the Air Force spaces, people were talking and they were up here above my head. And I'm just like, I looked at a guy and I was like, I don't belong here. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he was like, listen, he sat me down and was like, nobody's going to know everything, and everybody starts at the bottom. And you learn just by being there and listening to those conversations, and then by doing. So students bring in questions that they dig into, some of them more so than others. Some of them I'm just like, hey, I got to do some research. Give me some time. Some of them I can on the fly. They have different talents. They have different backgrounds. They know the imposter syndrome type of a feeling, but also some of them are just very full of ego. And so being able to share what they know with other students is one of those things that's really good to see and learn from. But really the biggest thing is that they bring up stuff that I haven't thought of, or they see issues in a code somewhere that we haven't even looked at because we just use it. So obscure things, new bash type scripts that do all of these different things. And I'm like, hey, give me that. That's great. I want to use it. So they bring in, extra resources and updates and all of the things that they're doing at their positions.
Fantastic. And it sounds like a really interesting way to learn. The fact that, they're getting to grips with the code base so early, and they're having the opportunities to flag these things. I think that probably inspires them to do more of it, right? They feel like they're having an impact right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Which is
for sure. And we tell them, if you see anything or anything needs changed or it's worded weird or doesn't make sense, we can update things. And so they feel like they have that influence on the instruction in the future, which they do.
Fantastic. Excellent. I'm sure anyone out there listening in that's, thinking about starting a career, their ears are pricking up a little bit. Definitely sounds like an awesome place to kickstart your career and get involved, from an early stage.
For sure.
Moving beyond the kind of teaching element, I wanted to really focus in just more on the cybersecurity industry more broadly and some of the emerging technology that we're seeing within that sector. So, look, cybersecurity, as with all kind of elements of tech, is constantly evolving. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think professionals are facing today, and how do you prepare the students for them?
There's constantly new threats. Every time we fix a patch or we change something or we update something, somebody else finds a way around that. There's always 0 days. Humans in and of themselves, so social engineering, those types of human error things are really big. There's a lot of social engineering stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of sending out emails and getting you to click a link. Even ManTech sends out spoofy emails to see if you'll click the link as training purpose, because that's a big thing. Those 0 days that nobody knows about that all of a sudden pop up and everybody's social security number is gone or bank account information's been passed off to the dark web somewhere. There's ransomware. You always hear about ransomware. Somebody took over somebody's system, wants money. That's a big one. And AI. AI is the new up and coming type of not only tool, but also threat.
Fantastic. And to kind of really drill down on AI, obviously AI has some really interesting applications, and we're seeing it, the impact that we've seen over the last 18 to 24 months has been incredible. And some of the new services and tools and ways of doing things that are being released onto the market are incredible to see. But as you've touched on, it's also a potential threat. Mm-hmm. If we were to drill down on that, what do you think are some of the realistic ways AI is shaping cybersecurity specifically?
So as a tool, and especially in education, as a tool with us, we allow them access to AI, that ability to put their code in and have it sort of debug. It's not the greatest at writing it yet, but it is good at debugging it. It's good at taking code like lab solutions that we give and breaking those down for students so that it makes more sense. Those research type of things that they're trying to dig into, or any of those deep questions that they want to ask, they might be able to find on AI. As far as threat, there could be some deep fake scams out there, automated phishing, ways to bypass security protocols, because AI knows about all the things. So AI knows how to bypass all the things. It's up and coming. It's big. There's a lot of people that are getting into it. As a training program, we've just started kind of digging into using AI and looking at AI and the ways that we can do that. We've recently partnered with somebody else to possibly bring in some automated grading, which will also be sort of AI driven. So it's definitely out there. It's definitely a great tool, but it's also, that kind of threat capability.
For sure. And I think we've seen that in the wider jobs market. I think two of the areas that we've really seen big growth in jobs over the past 18, 24 months is, as you'd expect, the world of data and AI and machine learning, but also in the world of cybersecurity, right? As the technology gets smarter and as you're leveraging all of this cool, amazing tech, cool. Yeah, fine. We can use AI to test our code, right? So it might mean that we might not need quite as many automation testers in that traditional sense, but we don't want to be applying AI to, make sure that our system is as secure as it possibly could be. And actually, we've seen a real spike in security professionals who are trying to get their heads around all these new ways of working, which is,
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. We kind of touched on imposter syndrome, but I really wanted to just, delve into this again, because I think you've got a really grounded perspective on it. How do you develop the mindset that you have? And what advice would you give to others that are dealing with self-doubt, maybe people earlier in their career or not so early in their career, right? I think it can affect anyone at any stage in their career.
Yeah. And, I said earlier that, I had somebody sit me down and tell me, everybody starts at the bottom. Having come from a background of a bunch of stuff before I turned 35 and did tech things, and as all the students come in and their computer science and engineering degrees, and I'm still trying to finish mine, I'm always like, do I really belong up here? But that knowledge that you have and those skills that you have from doing the thing really comes into play. Those that might be feeling like they're not an expert to begin with, not everybody's an expert to begin with. Even when I did nursing, it's one of those things where you're like, hey, I don't know how to get a job without having the skills to do the job. But the thing about cybersecurity and tech is that you can have the skills. You can have the skills without ever having a job. It's about what you can do and not so much about what you've already done. Does that make sense? I don't have to have some elaborate career to get my first job in tech. It was really hard in nursing to be able to get my first job. I had to work with an agency to even get close to being able to get a right fit of a job. But in tech, it's internships, it's CTFs, it's doing your projects and building a portfolio, depending on what type of cybersecurity you're trying to get into. So it's hard to overcome the imposter syndrome and not feeling like you belong there. But once you start developing those skills and you build that portfolio and you're proud of that, that can kind of help you get over that feeling of not belonging.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, what you've touched on there is really, again, some really tangible advice that people can take away. It's kind of like control the controllables, right? Control what you can control. You might not be able to control the interview, you might not, but you can control the prep you do beforehand, right? You can,
Correct.
as you say, make sure that portfolio is detailed, make sure that you're investing your time into learning. And the more prepared you are, the better chance you're going to give yourself down the line, the more confident you're going to feel down the line. Right?
Absolutely. And, interviews, you talked about interviews, tech interviews, they vary, but they're also pretty similar. If you're going out for coding, they're going to ask you pretty similar coding questions that you can kind of Google or AI, be like, hey, what kind of questions are out there? So you can prepare yourself for those questions when they do come. I can tell you the tech interviews that I've had, scary. I did not feel like I should be there. I'm like, I don't know any of these answers, but they expect certain things. They don't expect you to know everything. So sometimes they will ask you an off the wall question. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but that's okay. So even going into the interview, don't ever feel like you don't know something just because they ask you a question that's off the wall. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. And look, you work with, so many different students, right, from all sorts of different backgrounds. As we kind of touched on earlier, some of them that have gone through that more traditional route, others that perhaps haven't and have found their way into technology and through different routes. We've perhaps touched on some of this already, but what do you think are some of the key skills or mindsets that really help people to succeed in technology, regardless of where they started? Like, what are those common threads?
Curiosity, almost like a toddler type of mindset. Poke, 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 until
Yeah.
you get the answer. The ability to be flexible, not getting super frustrated, but more determined to find an answer, being able to adapt. It's ever changing constantly. There's new things coming out constantly. There's updates to documentation. Constantly, we have new kernels. Constantly, everything changes. So that adaptability is really big. Communication and collaboration is really big. I know in the programming sector, there's a lot of peer programming, team programming, working together. So that ability to collaborate, communicate is essential. Determination goes along with like resilience, the ability to, depending on what you're doing, not find an answer and be okay with that. Maybe I'm reverse engineering some kind of malware. I might spend 2 months on that and I might find nothing. And the ability to be okay with that is a really big thing. But also, that's kind of specific to if I'm doing malware development or malware RE. I already know that that's what my job's going to be, that I might look into things and not find answers. So, kind of having a good foundation and, all of those different things kind of plays well.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's interesting about, all of those things is a lot of those are soft skills, right? A lot of those aren't necessarily like particularly technical things. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a maths genius, it's not going to hurt. It probably helps, right? But at
Right.
the same time, it's like these are things that anyone can embrace and anyone can really evidence in their day to day.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I am the epitome of anybody can do it, because I started at 35. And if I can start at 35, anybody can start at any time. It's a learning experience. It's a curve. I can say going back to college at 35 was insane.
Yeah.
Trying to redo algebra. But, that flexibility and that resilience and that determination, those base skills are what's going to get you there.
Yeah, for sure. I think resilience and determination are absolutely two key factors in all of this and everything we've been discussing. And as you say, your career path is evidence of how determined you are to do something when you put your mind to it, whether that's becoming a nurse or going to the military or now in this role at ManTech. And yeah, definitely should be celebrated. You're out there teaching on a day-to-day, but how do you learn? How do you stay ahead of trends within cybersecurity and new threats? What's your process?
We have the opportunity as instructors to go work on projects. If we wanted to go help with a contract, availability and flexibility is there. But a lot of times it's kind of just me saying, hey, I didn't know this thing that a student asked me about, and I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more deeply. Or taking specific classes, digging into networks a little bit more. Some of my college courses allowing me to do those alternative classes that I want to take. Or, any of those courses out there, Udemy or any of those free courses out there that you can take to just kind of build on the knowledge that I already have. And really, a lot of times it's somebody asked me something and I didn't know. And so I wanted to dig into that. And so I find some kind of a course or some kind of a training, or I go do some kind of a project to kind of dig into that a little bit.
So it comes back to curiosity, I guess, back to that, the same thread that we already discussed. And yeah, I'd agree. There are so many options these days for ways you can learn, as you say, whether that's as simple as just asking the expert, asking, someone in the room who knows the answer, or as you say, formal learning like Udemy, or even YouTube and, all sorts of different free options out there. Yeah, there's a YouTube video on literally anything, anything you can think of.
There
There is
really
one,
is.
right? So it's like,
There really is.
yeah, it's about having the curiosity to go find it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's just taking the time to go out and find what it is you're trying to learn or pick up on.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Awesome. So look, I think to kind of round things out, I'd like to focus maybe on some advice for anyone out there who is aspiring to move into a career in cybersecurity. So look, it's such a broad field. How can someone who's just starting out figure out which path, whether it's like on the networking route, like intelligence gathering, the programming side, I'm like, how do they work out what's right for them?
So that's a lot of kind of internal digging and internal thinking, and also trying different things. If you like troubleshooting or infrastructure type things, then maybe you want to go network security or cloud security or system admin. If you like analyzing threats or investigations, then maybe you want to do forensics or cyber intelligence type stuff. If you want hands-on, maybe you want ethical hacking, maybe you want pen testing. If you really like coding and you feel like coding is your strength, then software development or malware analysis type stuff. If you like puzzles, reverse engineering is big. If you like risk assessment and compliance stuff, then, there's governance, there's risk, there's compliance. There's all of the pieces that go together to make cybersecurity feel. So really, it's a lot of kind of internal digging, what I think I would like to do, how do I feel about stuff, and a lot of maybe trying projects or maybe grabbing a mentor or asking somebody in the field to show you a little bit of the ropes of what they do on a day-to-day. And is that interesting to you? So it's a little bit of kind of internal figuring out what it is that you would like to do, because it is a wide field.
Yeah, for sure. Again, back to the curiosity point. And I suppose another point is there is almost an error of like trial and error to it as well, right? Like try things out, see how you like them. Just because you start off on the networking side, that doesn't mean you're stuck on the networking side forever. People can transition, make sideways moves. Like I'm sure you see it in ManTech, right? People moving from one area to other areas of the business.
Yeah, for sure. So in ManTech, like there's so much ability to laterally move to different teams, different spaces, different things. At ACTP, we bring in instructors to assist or lead specific pieces and, let them have that opportunity to be in front of a class. But yeah, so there's a lot of lateral movement that you can make at ManTech. So that's a great space to be. Like I said, I even was supposed to be on contract, but I ended up in the teaching space, and then I stayed in the teaching space. With the Army, I was supposed to do like analysis type stuff. And when I was taking the class in Pensacola, I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to like this or not. I'm going to be bored, but whatever. And then when I got to go do programming, that kind of clicked of, hey, I like to do this. I like the puzzle part. I like solving the puzzle part. And so it's kind of a bit of like trial and error, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. If you know where your passions lie, if you know what you want to do, then go shoot for that, right? If not, take the first step. And then, maybe the next step's a sideward step, maybe the next step's a diagonal step. But as long as you start walking, you'll eventually end up, where you
make movements. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Look, going to put you on the spot. Final question I have, and then of course, if there's anything we haven't had the chance to cover, the floor is yours. But for anyone out there that is interested in getting into cybersec, that is maybe a little bit overwhelmed, is there one kind of practical step you'd like them to take away, that one bit of advice you'd really like them to hold on to from today's conversation?
Know that you don't have to know everything. There are plenty of resources out there for tutorials. There is projects that you can do on your own. Zillion websites will say, hey, do a C project doing this. Hey, do a Python project doing this. Hey, do some kind of networking thing doing this. Build your own project, apply for internships, talk to the people that are in the field to begin with, do some CTFs, the capture the flag events. Those are really big for being able to kind of see what it is that you like. There's networking challenges, there's RE challenges, there's security challenges, there's bash challenges. There's all the different challenges that come in a CTF. You're not going to be a pro for the first time that you do one, so don't get frustrated. But take that opportunity to be able to go practice some of those skills and see what it is that you like. So yeah, just know that you're not going to know everything up front. Learn from the people that are there already and do the preparation.
Fantastic. Yeah, great advice. No, really, really great takeaway, I think. And to be honest, across today's episode, I think so much great, tangible, practical advice for anyone at any stage in their career, but particularly anyone listening in that is starting out on that journey. Fantastic. Look, that was all the questions I had for you, Athena. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of share? Anything else that we didn't get the chance to cover? If so, the floor is yours.
I mean, I think we covered everything that we wanted to talk about. If you're looking for a career path, ManTech is really, really huge. They are involved in many things. They have their hands on a lot of different pots. There's AI, there's data analytics, there's teaching, there's all kinds of different pots that you can delve into in ManTech. So, and I know they offer internships as well. I've had some interns in my class. So definitely look at ManTech as one of the possibilities. If this is something that you're trying to do, it has a lot of different aspects to it. And you're kind of on the cutting edge of cyber technology when you do that. But yeah, other than that, I think we talked about everything.
Fantastic. No, really well said. Really well said. And yeah, just to double down on Athena's final point there, for anyone out there listening in, that is considering their next career move or considering their first career move, and please check the podcast description. We'll make sure all the relevant links are in there. That'll help you to get in touch with ManTech. And who knows? Let's see. As we just discussed, take that first step. And maybe that first step for you listening out there is to click that link and get in touch with ManTech, and who knows where that might lead. So no, thank you so much for joining us today on the pod, Athena.
Thank you, Phil.
Very much. And thank you out there to everyone listening in. This has been another episode of the DevLab podcast. Tune in next time. We'll see you next week. Thanks all.